The lights of Arthur Ashe Stadium had never felt brighter. The 20,000-seat arena, the cathedral of American tennis, was packed to the rafters. The fans had come to see a spectacle, a pre-tournament exhibition featuring the brightest young stars in the sport. But what they witnessed was something far more significant. They witnessed a statement, a declaration, a moment that would send shockwaves through the tennis world. Standing on the court was Iva Jovic, the 18-year-old American prodigy, the player who had beaten Alex Eala not once, but twice in official matches this year. The Filipino media had dubbed Eala's record against Jovic as a jinx. The American had dominated their previous encounters, winning 6-4, 6-2 at the French Open and 6-2, 6-2 at the Queen's Club Championships. The narrative was set. Jovic had Eala's number. Jovic was the rising American star. Jovic was the future of American tennis. But Alex Eala had not read the script. She had come to New York to write her own story. And on this night, under the bright lights of Arthur Ashe Stadium, she would deliver a performance that would leave the tennis world speechless. The Eala Effect was on full display. The Filipino community had turned out in force, waving flags, cheering wildly, and creating an atmosphere that felt more like a home match than an exhibition. The energy was electric. The stakes were high, even though the match itself was billed as a friendly. This was not just about charity. This was about respect. This was about proving that the past was not a predictor of the future. And when the final point was played, the tennis world was stunned. Alex Eala had done more than just win. She had made a statement. She had shown that she was ready for the U.S. Open. She had proven that the jinx was broken. The roar of the crowd was deafening. The Philippine flags waved triumphantly. And in the center of it all stood Alex Eala, a champion who had just announced her arrival on the biggest stage in the world. To understand the magnitude of this moment, you have to understand the history between these two players. Alex Eala and Iva Jovic were more than just competitors. They were friends. They had shared the court as doubles partners at the ASB Classic in Auckland, New Zealand, earlier in the year, reaching the semifinals together. They were young, talented, and navigating the pressures of the WTA Tour together. But on the court, the dynamic was different. Jovic, despite being 3 years younger than Eala, had established a dominance over her Filipino friend that was becoming a talking point in the tennis media. Their first official meeting came at the French Open in Paris, a Grand Slam where Jovic defeated Eala in straight sets, 6-4, 6-2. The second meeting came just a month later at the Queen's Club Championships in London. The result was even more lopsided. Jovic won again, this time 6-2, 6-2. The narrative was clear. Iva Jovic, the 18-year-old American who had burst onto the scene by winning a WTA 500 title at the Guadalajara Open, was Eala's nemesis. The Filipino media had a term for it. They called it a jinx. Eala, for her part, had never been able to solve the puzzle of Jovic's game. The American's power, her precision, her ability to step up on the big points had consistently overwhelmed Eala. But this was a different Eala. The Eala who had arrived in New York was not the same player who had lost in Paris and London. This was a player who had just won her first WTA 500 title in Washington. This was a player who had climbed to a career-high ranking of world number 18. This was a player who had been practicing with two-time U.S. Open champion Venus Williams to sharpen her skills for the tournament. She was ready. She was focused. And she was about to prove that the past was just that, the past. The Stars of the Open exhibition was a showcase for the brightest young talents in the sport. It was a chance for fans to see the next generation of tennis stars before the main draw of the U.S. Open began. The event was scheduled for August 27th at Arthur Ashe Stadium, and it featured a lineup of rising stars from both the WTA and ATP tours. Amanda Anisimova was taking on Marta Kostyuk. Flavio Kobali was battling Lerner Tien. Arthur Fils was facing Alex Michelsen. But the match that everyone was talking about was Eala versus Jovic. The two young players, both seated in the upcoming U.S. Open singles draw, were the headliners of the event. Jovic was the American hometown favorite. The crowd was expected to be firmly behind her. But Eala had something else on her side. She had the Filipino community of New York. She had the Eala Effect. The atmosphere was electric. The Arthur Ashe Stadium, which can hold over 20,000 fans, was packed. The cheers for Jovic were loud, but the cheers for Eala were deafening. The Philippine flags waved proudly throughout the stands. It was a sea of red, white, and blue. And in the center of it all, the two friends prepared to do battle. The match, scheduled for a 5 a.m. Manila time start on August 28th, was more than just an exhibition. The proceeds from the event were going to the USTA Foundation, a charity that supports tennis programs for underprivileged youth. But for Eala and Jovic, the stakes were personal. This was a chance to set the tone for the US Open, a chance to send a message to the rest of the draw, a chance to prove that they belonged among the best in the world. From the first point, it was clear that this was not the same Alex Eala who had lost to Jovic twice before. The Filipino sensation was playing with a confidence and a freedom that had been missing in their previous encounters. Her shots were crisp. Her movement was fluid. Her focus was laser-like. She was not just playing to win. She was playing to make a statement. The fans in Arthur Ashe Stadium were treated to a display of tennis that was nothing short of breathtaking. Eala's backhand, the shot that Wielander had compared to McEnroe's, was working perfectly. She was using the angles, painting the lines, and pushing Jovic to the very edges of her ability. Her forehand, which had been inconsistent in their previous matches, was firing on all cylinders. She was taking the ball early, stepping into the court, and dictating the pace. The previous defeats at the French Open and Queen's Club had been characterized by Eala's struggles to handle Jovic's power. But this time, Eala was the aggressor. She was moving Jovic around the court, forcing her to hit shots on the run, and capitalizing on any weaknesses in the Americans' game. The tennis world was watching, and what they were seeing was a transformation. The final score, when it came, was a shock. But perhaps the most shocking thing was how comprehensive the victory was. Eala had not just beaten Jovic. She had dominated her. The 0-2 head-to-head record was no longer a jinx. It was a historical footnote. The Eala who had lost in Paris and London was gone. In her place was a player who was ready to compete for Grand Slam titles. The tennis world was stunned. The fans were elated. And Alex Eala had just announced her arrival on the biggest stage in the world. The victory over Jovic was not just about proving a point. It was about showcasing the power of the Eala Effect. The Filipino community of New York had turned out in full force, and they had made their presence felt. The cheers, the flags, the wave of red, white, and blue. It was a sight to behold, and it had given Eala a boost that was undeniable. Eala has always been able to draw a crowd. Her matches are a celebration of Filipino pride, a reminder that a nation of over 100 million people is behind her. In New York, that support was on full display. The Arthur Ashe Stadium was a sea of Philippine flags. The cheers for Eala were just as loud as those for the American, Jovic. It was a testament to the power of the Eala Effect. Eala had been training with Venus Williams in the lead-up to the US Open. The two have a history, having teamed up in the doubles tournament at the Bad Homburg Open, where they reached the quarterfinals. Training with the 7-time Grand Slam champion had clearly paid off. Eala's game was sharper, her focus was more intense, and her confidence was sky-high. The stars of the Open exhibition was a success. The fans had been treated to a display of high-level tennis. The USTA Foundation had raised money for a good cause, and Alex Eala had made a statement. She was ready for the US Open. The main draw, which was set to begin on August 30th, would be her chance to prove that she was not just a phenomenon. She was a champion. The US Open is the ultimate test. 7 matches, 2 weeks, the biggest stage in the sport. Alex Eala has already proven that she belongs. She has already become the highest-ranked Southeast Asian player in WTA history. She has already won a WTA 500 title. She has already reached the 4th round of a Grand Slam at Wimbledon in 2026. But the US Open is her chance to take the next step. It is her chance to win a Grand Slam. It is her chance to become a true champion. The victory over Jovic was a statement. It was a sign that Eala is ready. The jinx is broken. The doubters have been silenced. The past is no longer a predictor of the future. The 21-year-old Filipina has shown that she can beat anyone. She has shown that she belongs among the best. And with the support of her fans, her coach, and the legend Venus Williams, she is ready for whatever comes next. The tennis world is watching. The US Open is about to begin. And Alex Eala is at the center of it all. She is the biggest draw in women's tennis right now. She is the player that everyone wants to watch. She is the player who can fill stadiums. And she is the player who can win it all. The fight continues. The dream lives on. And the legacy is just beginning.